This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The United Nations warns of a humanitarian disaster in Ethiopia as thousands flee violence in the Tigray region. We bring you the latest on the UN-led Libya peace talks aimed at forming a unity government. And reforms in the DR Congo stall following a row within the ruling coalition. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight I'm alongside my colleague Rama, who has our business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Richard. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Egypt is announcing stricter rules for enterprises amid an uptick in COVID-19 cases. And Tunisia is citing the coronavirus pandemic for a 61% drop in tourism revenue. But where exactly will the country go from here? We'll explore that and plenty more in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thanks a lot, Rama. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. So good to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta. Let's begin in Ethiopia, where the United Nations is warning of a humanitarian disaster in the country. A week of fighting in the northern Tigray region has forced thousands of people to flee to neighboring countries, including Sudan, which sealed its border. Still, it and Kenya hope to bring the two sides to the negotiating table. Gerun Chala reports from Addis Ababa.
The battle in Tigray is now taking place in at least 6 battlefields. That is according to some army sources. And Ethiopia's National Defense Force are said to be engaged in heavy fighting against Tigray's special force and militia from Afar, Amhara, as well as from towns bordering Sudan and Eritrea. The army has announced that it has gained many victories over TPLF force and that it now controls strategic locations, including airports. Communication is still largely cut off in the Tigray region, and getting accurate information has proven to be difficult. But through social media, the regional authorities say they are determined to repel what they call an unlawful operation by the central government. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has already put 3 preconditions before the government holds any talks with the TPLF. Abiy says restoring law and order in the region, bringing those behind the conflict into justice, and restructuring the regional administration with a provisional leadership are conditions that must be made before any discussions are held. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Rwandan genocide suspect Felicien Kabuga has appeared before a United Nations tribunal for trial. This comes months after his arrest in Paris. In June, a French court ordered that Kabuga be handed over to the UN's International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. Prosecutors allege he bankrolled ethnic Hutu militias during the Rwandan genocide. In 1994, Hutu militias killed Tutsis and moderate Hutus. An estimated 800,000 people were killed in a 100-day period. The United Nations is hosting a round of talks on the Libyan conflict in Tunisia. The meeting aims to appoint an interim government which will be tasked with preparing for elections. The UN has said that the transition period should not exceed 18 months. Criticism has already emerged surrounding the selection of delegates to attend the talks. A council representing the country's Tuareg minority, as well as pro-GNA armed groups, are among those condemning the selection process. Tunisian President Kais Saied, in a press conference, urged the delegates to remain unified. Libyan joint military talks are also going on in the Libyan city of Sirte. The meeting is being held alongside the Libya Political Forum that is underway in Tunisia. The UN is managing both talks. Here is Adel Al-Mahroui, though, with more details.
In Tunisia, the United Nations has begun talks focusing on Libya's political roadmap, eyeing an agreement over comprehensive election. During the same time, parallel military negotiations are taking place in Sirte, in the central coastal region in Libya.
The international community used to think that the crisis in Libya is political. It appears now they realize the military aspect is the priority. I don't think the political dialogue in Tunisia would find any obstacles as long as the military crisis is getting resolved.
The United Nations support mission in Libya says the prime target for the military talks is to implement the ceasefire agreement reached on October 23. This is a decisive week for the country's future.
All news coming from Tunisia indicates that a political agreement is near. There is a solution on the table. To do that, we need to implement the military agreement. That is to evacuate all Turkish and foreign fighters and fight terrorism. These were the points standing in the way of any agreement.
During this joint military commission negotiations, Libyans should draft a detailed and timed plan to evacuate foreign fighters and set deadlines for prisoners' exchange. Heavy artillery and troops spread around Sirte and other Libyan cities should gradually withdraw in preparations to turn Sirte into a buffer zone.
The entire process is designed to hand over the security responsibilities of Sirte to a joint police task force. That is to ensure Sirte's independence from the influence of any Libyan faction, in preparations to make the city the transitional capital for Libya. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
A long-running political rivalry in the Democratic Republic of Congo is threatening to drag the country into a deeper crisis. Government reforms have stalled amid a row between President Tshisekedi and his predecessor Joseph Kabila over the appointment of officials to key positions. President Tshisekedi has now called for national consultations to chart a new path for the country. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa reports from Kinshasa. Let's take a listen.
DRC President Felix Tshisekedi signed a power-sharing deal with his predecessor Joseph Kabila last year after he failed to get a majority in parliament. The deal paved the way for the formation of a government. But members of the ruling coalition, composed of Kabila's Common Front for Congo and Tshisekedi's Cap for Change party, have disagreed over several issues. Their differences have now come to a head, prompting President Tshisekedi to call for national consultations with political, religious, and opinion leaders.
President Tshisekedi was open and is still open to work with anyone. And that was the design for the country's sake to go forward. However, the other party, it was not the case. And I think they really had malicious ideas. Trying really not to lift up the country, but really to sink it, and with the president with it.
But members of Kabila's coalition have dismissed the accusations leveled against them.
Our colleagues are using the Common Front for Congo as a scapegoat for all of the failures of the government. In reality, we haven't blocked any project. The key obstacle that the president is facing comes from his entourage. His inner circle has many people who have no idea about running public affairs.
Congolese citizens, fed up with the bickering in the ruling coalition, expressed their support for the president's initiative by marching along the streets of the capital Kinshasa on Saturday.
We believe the time has come for our leaders and political actors to design new ways to govern our country for the good of all people.
We are not interested in the FCC, CACH or the Lamoka coalition. All we want is good policies that will enable us to live better lives.
The ongoing talks initiated by the president seek to get views from Congolese citizens about setting up a new political outfit known as the Sacred Union. The union is supposed to replace the ruling coalition that's been beset by differences among its leaders. The national consultations held by President Tshisekedi have sparked a lot of anger among members of Joseph Kabila's coalition, FCC. The coalition holds the majority in parliament and the Senate. Its top leadership has held a series of meetings and made it clear that they won't take any plans to break up the coalition lying down.
Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Burkina Faso President Marc Christian Kabore is hitting the campaign trail ahead of the presidential poll. The country is set to hold its general elections on November the 22nd. Kabore is seeking a second term. He will face 12 other candidates. His first term has been plagued by both terror attacks and the rise of intercommunal violence. Addressing his supporters, Kabore spoke about the attacks the country has faced, saying Burkinabes will never bow to terrorists.
We must avoid stigmatization and retreating into our own cultures. I say this because terrorism is not created by a community. People who carry out terrorism can be found in all communities of Burkina Faso.
All of Hong Kong's opposition lawmakers say they are stepping down after 4 of their colleagues were dismissed under a new resolution approved by Beijing. The National People's Congress Standing Committee, the country's top lawmaking body, has ruled that the Hong Kong regional government has the power to directly disqualify lawmakers without going through the courts. The decision requires politicians to swear allegiance to Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and punishes those committing acts that endanger national security. Chinese officials have defended the move, saying it provides a legal basis for regulating the qualification of lawmakers. Hundreds of Russian peacekeepers have arrived in Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Moscow's brokered peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan to end more than 6 weeks of fighting. About 1,600 more Russian troops are on their way and will remain in the region for 5 years to oversee peacekeeping operations. The deal is celebrated as a victory in Azerbaijan. In Armenia, however, it has triggered unrest from crowds who stormed government buildings. Many Armenians have labeled the agreement as a betrayal. The deal ends military action between the two countries, which began on September the 27th, and restores calm to the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. But it is populated and under control by ethnic Armenians. Now to Saudi Arabia, where at least 4 people have been injured after a blast during a World War I memorial ceremony. European diplomats were attending the event at a cemetery in the port city of Jeddah. It's not clear if any of them are among those wounded. The blast is the second security incident to take place in Saudi Arabia within the last couple of weeks. Last month, a Saudi man was arrested after attacking a security guard at the French consulate. The embassy has urged French nationals in Jeddah to exercise maximum vigilance. And Bahrain has declared a week of official mourning following the death of Prime Minister Sheikh Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa. He was 84. The country's royal palace announced his passing in a statement on Twitter. Sheikh Khalifa was the world's longest serving prime minister, holding the post since independence in 1971. The burial will take place after his remains are returned from the U.S., where he was hospitalized. All right, the news continues here on Africa Live. Here's a look at what's ahead. African countries participate in COVID-19 vaccine trials. And we compare the different anti-pandemic strategies applied in Europe and Africa to limit the spread of the coronavirus.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. At least 17 people have died from an unknown illness in Nigeria's north-central state of Benue. The government says it is investigating the cause of the illness and working to bring the situation under control. Correspondent Phil Ihaza has more on this.
The confirmation of the reported deaths and illness was made by the Benue State's Commissioner for Health, Dr. Emmanuel Ikolono. He says most of the cases have been reported from the Ogbadibo local government area of the state. According to the commissioner, some people infected with the disease are currently receiving treatment at various hospitals in the state capital, Makurdi. The commissioner says the state government has started investigations with a team of experts at the health ministry and other related agencies to establish the cause of the illness. He says that according to findings so far, symptoms of the illness include fever, abdominal pain, general body weakness, and in some cases stooling and vomiting with stains of blood. The Benue State Governor Samuel Otom is also advising residents of the affected local government area to maintain good hygiene practices and report any suspected case with similar symptoms to health authorities. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
China is defending its leading vaccine from Chinese pharmaceutical giant Sinovac. Beijing says a participant's recent death during clinical trials is not related to the drug.
Sinovac's cooperation partner, the Butantan Institute in Brazil, found the relevant incidents have nothing to do with the vaccine. Sinovac will keep in touch with the Brazilian side over the matter.
Still, the volunteer's death prompted Brazil to suspend on Monday trials of the vaccine. Researchers have been unclear about what happened, but Sao Paulo's government calls the death a suicide, although it says more investigation is needed. Research seeking a COVID-19 vaccine continues across Africa. Several countries have begun vaccine trials in collaboration with global pharmaceutical companies and universities. Several African states have also joined an initiative fronted by the World Health Organization to supply hundreds of millions of vaccine doses once they become available. Here's CGTN's Robert Nagila with more on that story.
As global efforts to find an effective COVID-19 vaccine are stepped up, all 54 African countries have signed up to COVAX, an initiative securing at least 220 million doses of vaccine for the continent. It's led by the World Health Organization, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. Now, 8 African countries are self-financing their vaccine doses through the COVAX facility. Separately, a number of countries on the continent have either begun vaccine trials or signed agreements for the supply of vaccine doses. South Africa has several vaccine trials underway at various stages. The first trial, in collaboration with Oxford University and the Jenner Institute, started on the 23rd of June. Another trial is in partnership with the US drug company Novavax, and a third is with pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson, which has signed a deal with South African pharmaceutical company Aspen to manufacture a vaccine. In Egypt, 2 vaccine trials are underway in partnership with Chinese pharmaceutical giant Sinopharm Group. The country's leading pharmaceutical company, Phaco, has also signed a deal with the Russian Direct Investment Fund to supply Egypt with 25 million doses of the Russian vaccine Sputnik V. In Kenya, the government approved clinical trials in September for a vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University. And Uganda is set to launch its first vaccine trials in December in collaboration with the Imperial College of London.
Governments across the globe have been forced to start reintroducing restrictive measures even as COVID-19 pandemic continues to hit their economies. From Europe to Africa, health authorities are applying different strategies to limit the spread of the virus. CGTN's Enoch Sokolia takes a closer look at the difference between both approaches.
It's another critical moment for governments as COVID-19 cases surge in parts of Africa and Europe. Germany, France, Italy and the UK are once again turning to lockdowns to try and get the highly contagious virus under control, while a health crisis is looming in Africa. Kenya, for example, had its highest number of COVID-19 related deaths on Tuesday after 24 people succumbed to the virus. The number of patients in intensive care units is rising. Kenya's head of state felt he had to act.
This is not a time for popular decisions. In order to appease the public, we must choose the bold over the popular if we are truly to serve our people.
Weeks after some restrictions were lifted, the Kenyan government was forced to backpedal. The 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. night curfew is back. Restrictions on the operations of bars have been reintroduced.
Europe's #1 weapon against COVID-19 has been total lockdowns. Now, this is a strategy that is yet to be embraced by most African countries. The fear is the adverse effects such measures could have on the economies.
You're trying to balance between the livelihoods of the people and the lives of the people. In Kenya, we've struggled with the livelihoods, and that is why you're seeing we did not even at any point, institute full lockdowns where people stay in their homes, because that will have brought a completely different problem for the government. What we saw was containment of movement.
In European countries like Germany, governments have made funds available to ease financial pains brought about by lockdowns and other containment measures. Experts say that makes it a little easier for the population to adhere to government directives. With weak systems, most African countries have failed to cushion their economies and the people, even with lesser measures. And that has affected strategies employed by governments.
The whole issue of corruption on COVID funds now made this situation where the public has this belief, which is a myth perhaps, that the COVID numbers are basically linked to funds, and so it's about pilferage of funds and not about the disease.
Dr. Mwachonda says what is lacking in Africa is a whole of government, whole of society approach. He says that even though tougher measures in Europe are affecting the continent of Africa, Kenya and other states on the continent can borrow a leaf. He says cushioning the economy and the population could go a long way in ensuring people adhere to the basics of disease prevention. Enoxikolia, CGTN, Nairobi.
Now let's head to North Africa. Many Egyptians have largely ignored the wearing of masks as a measure to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The number of daily infections has jumped from 100 a day to 239 in the first 10 days of November. The Egyptian government has taken steps to ensure citizens observe all health regulations, as Yasser Hakim reports from Cairo. Let's take a listen.
Another strong endorsement of the importance of masks by a top health official.
The mask is the best invention for 2020. It's a simple item, easy to wear, easy to handle, and take with you everywhere. But at the same time, it protects you very, very much.
The health minister has, however, warned of serious consequences in the coming months if some members of the public continue ignoring health regulations.
Studies show that from December, if we don't wear masks regularly, infections will double every week, while death rates will triple.
Her statements come after most Egyptians threw caution to the wind and failed to observe measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus.
There is no abiding by regulations at all, not in the metro underground or any form of transportation, offices or other places. The reason is that there has not been enough awareness amongst people. People started thinking the coronavirus has disappeared after the number of cases started dropping. This is dangerous.
To address the problem, the government has decided to reinforce stringent health and safety measures. It has warned that it will impose a new lockdown if COVID-19 infections continue to rise.
President Sisi has said that the health of the citizen is more important than the economy. The measures taken have an impact on the economy, but the priority is the Egyptian people.
As a sign of the government's seriousness to take action, hefty fines are being slapped on those who are not wearing masks in public transport or crowded places. And for the first time, a number of university students were temporarily suspended for violating health regulations in college. The government's policies to tackle the coronavirus early on before it reaches critical rates, similar to the ones in some European countries. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's Wits University has announced a major breakthrough in HIV prevention. Women will soon be able to take one injection with an antiretroviral every 8 weeks to prevent HIV infection. And that's according to a result of a study conducted by the university. CGTN's Yulisa Jamela has more on this story.
One injection given every 2 months has proved to be 90% more effective than a daily pill at preventing HIV in women. A study by the Vets Reproductive Health and HIV Institute has revealed. The study was conducted on over 3,000 HIV-negative women in 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa.
As you know, particularly in this region, more than half of women are infected with HIV. New infections are in HIV, and women bear a disproportionate burden of HIV in our region. Although we've had access to oral PrEP, I think the finding that injectable PrEP is so much better than oral PrEP really means that we have an additional option that will fit into women's lives and hopefully help us roll back the tide of HIV.
Having an alternative to taking daily pills could be a critical intervention for individuals who struggle to take the pills due to stigma or other privacy issues.
Taking an injection 8 weekly is far easier for many women than taking a pill a day, and overcomes some of the challenges that they've experienced, which are both related to just the habit of taking a pill a day and remembering to take a pill a day, but also the social pressures that come with having bottles of pills around.
More studies are expected to take place before the regimen is made available to the public.
There are additional scientific and clinical questions that we still have to answer. So we're not looking at something that's going to be available immediately. But clearly this is going to be fast-tracked both from the clinical research point of view and the manufacturing side. Because access to this for a country like ours, with such high numbers of infected young women and new infections every year, it could be a game changer.
The results of the study have been hailed by many in the health industry as a milestone for prevention of HIV among women at risk of HIV. Once the injection is available for public use, it will help millions of women and girls in this region. According to UNAIDS, women and girls in sub-Saharan Africa account for at least 59% of all new HIV infection cases. Yulisa Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The 20th meeting of the Councils of Heads of State of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization took place on Tuesday. Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered a speech from Beijing. He urged world leaders to strengthen their joint response to COVID-19 while supporting each other's containment efforts. South African scholar Francesco Paolalucci echoed President Xi's sentiments, emphasizing the Shanghai spirit.
So I think it's really important to remember the Shanghai spirit. I was in Shanghai, I felt the Shanghai spirit. And it's ultimately people coming together, people working to solve issues. That's how we can diffuse risks. That is how we can face these massive challenges that are ahead of us. And there's absolutely no question that multilateralism is the way forward. We heard it in Xi Jinping's speech today. It is the path to peace, prosperity, win-win cooperation, harmonious development, and ultimately sustainable and eco-conscious ways of moving forward. That is how we will take humanity to the next stage.
Our coverage continues on Africa Live. Time now for our business segment with Ramanyan.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. Egypt announces stricter rules for enterprises amid an increase in COVID-19 cases. And Tunisia is blaming a 61% dip in tourism revenue on the pandemic. But what solutions are on the table? We'll explore that next.
taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start up north. Egypt's cabinet has released new regulations that require most commercial establishments to close early as authorities there grapple with measures to contain the COVID-19 pandemic while avoiding a complete shutdown of the economy. Egypt has about 109,000 active COVID-19 cases. 100,000 people have recovered, while the disease has killed some 6,380 people. From Cairo, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
Mustafa Wael owns this small shop that sells electricity equipment in Egypt's capital. He says the government's decision to order shops to close in 10 p.m. is a bid to curb COVID-19 infections and will have a negative effect on some businesses, including his.
It is in our culture and habits that we stay up late. Egyptians like to do their shopping and outings at night. That is why closing early will cut our revenue stream further. I already had to let my workers go because I can't pay them anymore due to the recession caused by the pandemic's fallout. But I believe health comes first, so I agree with the government decision.
Officials have blamed citizens and business owners for not sticking to health regulations. Secret inspections of 155 facilities have led to the complete closure of 55 restaurants and cafes that have violated anti-coronavirus measures. More inspections are underway.
Official government statistics show there are 700,000 registered workers in the services industry, but unofficial numbers show they could be as high as 3 million. I agree with the early closing hours directive, but there should be compensation for workers, especially in cafes and restaurants who are set to lose the most from this situation.
The North African nation's government is trying to avoid a second wave of coronavirus during winter, which could be more deadly than the previous one, and has threatened to impose a total lockdown if the situation doesn't improve.
There's a strong connection between a lockdown and loss of jobs everywhere in the world. Egypt has managed to keep it in check, and we want to maintain this. So I'm calling on business owners, employees, and everyone else to adhere to health precautions to avoid this scenario.
Meanwhile, officials and media are telling people to maintain social distancing, wear masks, and stay away from closed and crowded places. Although the infections are relatively low, at just over 200 per day, the government has put its hospitals on high alert as a precautionary measure, just in case the numbers keep rising. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Still in Northern Africa, Tunisia's central bank says the 61% plunge in tourism revenue is mostly attributable to the pandemic. Tunisia, of course, does rely fairly heavily on its tourism sector for both foreign currency earnings and quite a few jobs at home. But now it's facing the threat of seeing thousands of jobs declare bankruptcy as foreign tourist traffic and spending evaporates.
This protest of tour operators and travel agents has become an ordinary scene in downtown Tunis, where thousands of players in the tourism industry are facing an economic crisis. Drawn from various regions across the country, these business owners have been expressing their anger at the government for failing to cushion their businesses from collapse since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in March.
There's zero activity, zero salaries, no money since March. Tourism professionals have no resources. This is a catastrophic situation.
Industry players say that the government has failed to meet its promises to over 400,000 people working in the tourism industry. Already, tens of thousands of jobs have been lost following the first and the ongoing second wave of the pandemic.
Tourism professionals are suffering. The state must react and help us. We are fed up with empty promises. We are forced to pay our loans, leasing social security contributions and taxes. While we don't have any resources, the tourism sector cannot be abandoned by the government.
The country's prime minister declared that the 2020 complementary state budget will provide for supporting the tourism industry.
The tourism sector is in crisis globally. There are many difficulties due to the COVID-19 crisis. The state is looking for concrete solutions in the new budget in consultation with the professionals who are struggling while fighting for this pillar of the national economy.
The Tunisian government has recently banned travel between the country's regions during the holidays, suspended schools and public gatherings, and extended a curfew as it tries to contain a rapid surge of COVID-19 cases. Experts believe that these decisions have further deepened the crisis in the tourism industry. According to the National Institute of Statistics, the number of tourists rose 13.6% to 9.5 million in 2019. However, less than 5 million people, including Tunisian residents abroad, have visited the country until the first week of November. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In the face of a rising tide of COVID-19 cases, authorities in Algeria are also tightening their pandemic response measures. The curfew in the North African state will now run from 8 p.m. to 5 in the morning in 29 of the country's 48 prefectures. Circulation of public and private transportation will be suspended on weekends countrywide. These measures are in effect for the next 15 days.
The quarantine has seriously affected our business. And although my sons help me here in the shop, the expenses remain very high, and the assistance provided by the state is minimal and insufficient.
Frankly, I will not take long to close my business and leave this store. The situation has become very severe and I cannot bear any more patience. Customers are becoming very few and there is a recession in trade. And if new measures are adopted to fight against COVID-19 by forcing us to close the shop, this will be a great disaster and its consequences are dire.
I don't think that merchants will withstand much if a total quarantine is imposed that forces them to close their stores. If we, the customers, will be harmed by that, then how will they be? I believe that new approaches must be considered that protect all segments of society.
Away from the continent now, let's focus on China's online shopping extravaganza known as Double 11. China's Alibaba said orders on its e-commerce platforms during the Singles' Day shopping spree exceeded $70 billion by Wednesday evening as lockdown-weary consumers splurged on as many as 16 million discounted goods. Since its inception in 2009, Double 11 has become the world's largest single online sales festival. Snacks and foods, apparently, always a very popular category. 2020 was no exception.
At around 10:30 in the morning, dozens of shoppers were grabbing snacks off the shelves at this store in Shanghai's downtown Putuo district, taking advantage of the special discounts available during the shopping carnival.
Today is the Double 11 shopping festival, and I saw the great discounts here, so I came to buy some nuts.
It has been more than a year since the French retail giant Carrefour sold a majority 80% stake in its China business to e-commerce giant Suning. Since then, online sales have boosted the company's business big time, especially during the shopping spree. Carrefour's online sales are now running at 5 times the level they hit during last year's Double 11.
From October 30th to November 3rd, all our imported items were at half price, and we launched another round of discounts beginning last Friday. Snacks like Lay's are heavily discounted. All our imported items, carbonated beverages, dairy, and fresh fruit are the most popular.
This year's Double 11 Shopping Festival started as early as October 20th, and apart from just offering special discounts, some brands are taking advantage of the booming live streaming to grab more consumer attention, and it seems like it's working. Chinese snack giant Bastore hosted a live stream starring singer Wu Yifan last month to promote one of its famous products, crispy grain cakes, and sold 30 tons of them in just 1 second. The special snack package Wu designed wound up pulling in 2.4 million yuan in sales during his live stream. E-commerce giant JD.com says that as of noon today, Bastore was ranking first in Double 11 sales of leisure snacks, followed by another Chinese snack giant Three Squirrels and US potato chip brand Lay's.
Snacks were the first thing I bought. Someone in my office bought 2 large boxes of cereal. I bought nuts and preserved fruits from Three Squirrels and Bastore for 700 or 800 yuan.
I spent several hundred on some milk, biscuits, and imported candy.
The pandemic has expanded people's demand for snacks, and sales have been growing since then. But at the same time, some small brands have been driven from the market by tougher competition. This year, snacks are a key product for live streams. Many leading live streamers like Li Jiaqi are now selling snacks. Many brands are digitizing themselves, building their own supply chains and membership networks.
Consulting firm Frost & Sullivan says that the value of China's snack market has now reached 1.1 trillion yuan, a year-on-year increase of 11%. So far, however, few of the players have more than a 10% market share. The market is getting bigger, but the competition is still tough. Zhang Shishen, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Last story in the segment is still in the world of e-commerce. The Double 11 shopping day has been a vital lifeline for retailers, particularly after the coronavirus pandemic hammered sales pretty much around the world. But for US brands who are looking to cash in, there are indications that Chinese consumers may be cooler to them in 2020. Karina Huber found this report from Philadelphia.
China's Singles Day is the world's biggest shopping event of the year. With live streaming events to showcase brands and new products, it looks and feels like a rock concert. Retail expert Bert Flickinger says after a rough year marked by the coronavirus pandemic, Chinese consumers are expected to come out in record force.
Singles Day this year in 2020 will be the most important day in retail history. Our estimates are that Singles Day will do over $50 billion US.
U.S. brands have traditionally done well on Singles Day, but reports indicate they are now losing favor among Chinese consumers. Experts say that's in part because of growing competition from high-quality Chinese brands. But a rise in nationalism amid an era of tense China-U.S. relations is also to blame. Foreign phone makers like Apple once dominated the Chinese market, but now the top 3 phone brands are all Chinese. Flickinger believes the Gap, Under Armour, and North Face could all suffer under the current environment, but other U.S. brands are still thriving.
The Chinese market for sneakers has been growing exponentially, and one of the hottest U.S. brands among sneakerheads is Nike, which has been preparing all kinds of events for Singles Day.
The company says that during a bonus Singles Day event this year, launched on November 1st, it generated more than $15 million in sales on Tmall in a span of 51 seconds.
It's a great moment for interacting with the Chinese consumer when they're seeking not only to purchase, but they're also always seeking novelty and innovation. So it's a great proving ground for us.
Estee Lauder and other U.S. beauty brands are also performing well in China. They are the lucky ones. Those that are losing their appeal face a particularly challenging global market that puts even more pressure on them to do well on Singles Day.
Singles Day is the only place in the world that can offset that dramatic sales decline in the U.S. and Europe.
Karina Huber, CGTN, Philadelphia.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In global business, we're looking at the energy sector in South Africa. The government over there wants to build an extra 2.5 gigawatts of nuclear generation capacity. But how will they pay for it? And is this the best possible alternative? We'll explore that live from Johannesburg at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Richard.
Thanks a lot, Rama. The news continues on Africa Live. A lot more coming your way in just a moment. Here's a look at what's ahead. Coming up, a look at Nigeria's unique knock culture that's said to be one of West Africa's earliest civilizations.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Africa has many interesting and varied ancient cultures. One of them is the unique Nok culture in Nigeria's northern state of Kaduna. It's one of West Africa's earliest civilizations. Figurines found around 500 BC in the Nok region have gained a place in museums around the world. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam tells us more.
Nigeria's Nok Museum, located in the northwest, holds a fascinating tale of culture and prolific arts. It's become prominent thanks to its distinct, roughly 2,000-year-old figurines called the Nok terracotta. The Nok culture is the first in West Africa to claim the creative artistry of these baked clay statues as its own. Many attach sacred significance to these figurines that are now found in several Nok sites.
The terracotta wasn't created by us. Our forefathers found it while the miners were mining tin that they found them. Now the terracotta became the roots of Ham culture, like the symbol of our tradition, and anywhere it is seen in the world knows that it is from Nok, and Nok is Ham culture.
Even in contemporary arts, people attach some spiritual meaning to the works that artists do, especially when they cannot understand what the artist is trying to portray. So it is normal, especially for items that have been dug out from the ground. It is normal when they didn't know anything about it, they will always arrogate spiritual meanings to them. But in actual sense for us, scientifically, they simply tell us the story of what life was.
Archaeological findings reveal that early settlers in the Nok region had a structured society with a level of civilization. It is seen in the distinct features of the terracotta, elaborate hairstyles, trinkets, and facial piercings. Although the traditional arts are found in museums around the world, many of them were taken out illegally.
They are kept in various museums around the world, but Nigeria has the right and ownership of the work. So we have them in the Nigerian museums, and there are people who also have them as private collections. Some of the arts have been looted, but the National Commission for Museums and Monuments has done a lot in managing it. We have also tried to ensure that those items that have been looted and taken outside this country through bilateral and multilateral interaction with the world community, with the international community, Nigeria has been able to retrieve some of these works, and it is always in the public glare when we receive them.
The younger generation in Nok is eager to pass down the culture. The terracotta here remains a major symbol of Nigeria's material and spiritual heritage. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Kaduna, Nigeria.
And we are not done just yet. We'll see you on the other side of the break with your sports news. Here's a look at those headlines. Tunisia out to extend Group J lead in Tanzania AFCON 2021 qualifiers doubleheader.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks,